Rigged for dive! We're going to submarine the Democrats this midterms. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is another declaration of truth from your host, Terry A. Hurlbut. Now I know I've got your attention. You're wondering, what am I talking about? Here it is. The people who make their money guessing how you will vote in elections have a new name for Trump voters. They call us submerged voters. And what sort of vessel submerges regularly? A submarine, of course! Stick with me to the end when I return to that concept. But for now, on one hand, this bespeaks a climate of oppression, or at least the perception of it, that has just gone from awful to good grief. But on the other, it could mean that the Democrats, or especially the president, have made a fatal mistake. Fatal to their power, that is. Before I dive into what a submerged voter is, I do want to shout out to the prime sponsor of this channel, which is Conservative News and Views. Link in the description. Be sure to check out the awesome CNAV Store. Scroll down near the bottom for that link. Lots of great merchandise there, especially this t-shirt that I have chosen for today, which depicts Plato saying, "No one is more hated than he who speaks the truth." Though actually, I'm going to make most of you like me, because here is a truth you will love to hear. Speaking of which, if you like what you're about to hear, you can like this video. You can also click the bell icon to get a notice every time I come up with a new one. In fact, do you see the new icon, the heart shape with the US dollar sign in it? That's the super thanks icon. If you really want to keep these videos coming, click on that and leave me a tip. Any currency will do. Alright, now hear this as I give my best Clark Gable impression. Lookouts below! Clear the ridge! Auga! Auga! Dive! 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 Now you're going to learn what a submerged voter is. Now, Mr. Robert C. Kahali, the head of polling for the Trafalgar Group, coined this term, submerged voters. He explained it on Twitter in 5 tweets, to which I have left links in the description, and here is the full transcript. In 2016, Donald Trump supporters were called deplorables and other unflattering names. This was a major contributor to the shy Trump voter phenomenon that most polling missed, which resulted in a major loss in public confidence for polling following the election. In 2020, people who supported Trump or espoused conservative values out of step with woke culture found themselves being canceled or doxxed. This led to hidden voters that most polling undercounted. Therefore, Trump's support in key battleground states exceeded expectations. Now that the Biden administration has essentially classified MAGA Republicans as a threat to democracy, marshaling federal law enforcement to focus on them, this move has created a new type of voter that will be even harder to poll or even to estimate. I call this new group submerged voters. They aren't putting stickers on their cars, signs in their yards, posting their opinions, or even answering polls. At this point, I think it's fair to say that Biden's pursuit of and attacks on MAGA Republicans have created an army of voters who will be virtually impossible to poll, even for us, and more difficult still to estimate. The 2022 Republican turnout will likely be higher than any of the polls or models are showing. All polls, including ours, will understate the impact of these submerged voters. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're all out there scratching your heads and asking, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot is he talking about? He's talking about that speech, of course. You know the one I mean, where that old fogey balling his fists and pumping them up and down in front of a backdrop that looked like something out of Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. Plus the Trump raids on other prominent Trump supporters, and internal memos calling half the country domestic extremists. This indeed has many of us who voted for Trump waiting for a knock on the door. We then expect an initialism we have come to dread. FBI. And they will not be as polite as Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. was. That outfit is now a monster. And many of us who remember when Pinkertons investigated most interstate crime would sooner trust Pinkertons for any real crime-fighting function that the FBI still serves. And don't think the FBI rank and file are copacetic with this either. Current and former agents have come forward accusing the higher-ups of exaggerating the problem, if we even have one, and labeling people as white supremacists to protect the narrative. I quote one of them, "We are kind of the lapdogs. We are the actual agents doing these kinds of investigations, trying to locate a crime that fits otherwise First Amendment protected activity." And Second Amendment activity too. Did you fly a Gadsden Don't Tread on Me flag? Do you own guns? Have you gone to a school board meeting lately and raised your voice against some woke nonsense or other? If so, watch out. They've got their eye on you. These are scenes right out of a failed TV pilot from 1967 titled Shadow on the Land. 8 years ago, I reviewed that failed pilot, and I've left a link in the description so you'll know what I'm talking about. And I'll repeat one thing I've said more recently, that legacy media have become and are their willing accomplices. We now turn to how voters for some sane public policy can now call themselves submerged voters. But before I do, I want to shout out to a sponsor who can really help you through the economic storms to come. That sponsor is oursilverlines.com. Do you feel like you're working harder for your money just to get by? You are not alone. The fluctuating economy, employment issues, and unexpected changes in life have left many families struggling over the past few years. Collecting gold and silver can help shield you against many of these challenges. But if you're like me many years ago, you don't know where or how to start. Our Silver Lines helps by connecting you with thousands of members who are learning the secrets to creating and protecting true wealth by collecting precious metals. Whether you just want to collect rare and unique coins or take advantage of the business opportunities that company provides, they can help you learn to live an exceptional life. Visit oursilverlines.com to learn how you can build a legacy for your future. Now, back to our briefing. First, the phrase ignored voters fit better. Pollsters routinely underweighted us and overweighted our opponents. Organizations like Gallup and Harris and Marist and especially Quinnipiac University sought to dampen conservative confidence, and dampen it they did. Nor did Senators John McCain from Arizona and Mitt Romney, now in Utah, help by running presidential campaigns to lose. Then, Hillary called us a basket of deplorables. That made us shy voters because we were shy about telling just any average Joe what we thought. But over time, we heard this incredible man Trump, who might have sounded like a jerk sometimes if the quotes from him are accurate. But he had something on the ball that Hillary obviously did not. So Trump won. In 2020 came cancel culture. People actually lost their jobs and even their bank accounts. That produced the hidden voter. But Trump still found more of us in 2020 than he did in 2016. Now, why did he lose anyway? Well, if you believe Biden, they found their own hidden voters who didn't know how to vote. Now, if the Democrats had governed as moderately as they said they would, they'd have no problem, if they're correct. They didn't. They skewed left hard. But they must have known they had a problem when they started to lose their baseline. The Virginia pre-midterm must have scared them. Mohandas Gandhi once said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. Well, the Democrats went directly from ignore to fight and skipped over the laughing part, which probably means they can't take a joke, much less make one. In any event, we got the National School Boards Association letter and the FBI's willing participation, then the Trump raid, and that speech. So now, as Mr. Kahali says, we are the direct subjects of law enforcement attention, hence the submerged voters, who will make every effort not to call attention to themselves. And why should we post our opinions on Facebook or Twitter anyway, knowing that those two platforms will take them down, and Twitter especially? Although the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals this last week set up a split in the circuits over online censorship, after the 11th Circuit affirmed a lower court ruling striking down an anti-censorship law in Florida. The Fifth Circuit reversed a lower court ruling striking down a similar law in Texas. Well, that's going to the Supreme Court. Bank on it. The Supreme Court never tolerates a split in the circuits for longer than a single term. Now, reaction to this concept, submerged voters, signals agreement, with few serious observers willing to dispute it. People's Pundit Rich Barris has a tweet, to which I've left a link in the description. He writes, and I quote, "Yes, call them an enemy of the state 1 month and next month participation falls, and those who do take part claim to be undecided across the board," unquote Rich Barris. Whoa! Expect the undecided to break Republican this midterms, if that's correct. And now, I've got 4 tweets giving reactions from ordinary voters. Here's one who calls himself an independent, willing to speak out only anonymously because his career was canceled in 2020, and a conservative. He took that speech personally and intends to vote in person. Next, we have a voter who says she smiles and keeps her mouth shut. This next one is interesting. In reply to someone who said most Trump supporters are anything but shy, he says, and I quote, "You live in a bubble. I don't sport bumper stickers because the Bernie Beto people will key your car." Thus the shy vote. Now let me explain that. Keying is a form of vandalism in which you pull out your house key or any other kind of key and literally scratch a message into the paint on somebody's car. I've had it happen to me. I won't tell you how much it costs to have my hood repainted, but I'll tell you this. I'd expect that price to double today. Thanks, Joe. And last, a voter said she recently told her husband that she'd like to go to the doors of the houses sporting Democrat signs in their yards and tell them it must be nice to feel safe displaying their political preferences in their yards, which is a thing she, a conservative-leaning independent voter, did not feel safe doing. She ends with a photograph of Biden with a caption to remind everybody that when a union worker in a Detroit automobile factory asked him about his policies and what they would mean for that factory worker's job, he said, and this is a direct quote, "I don't work for you," unquote, Sleepy Joe. So there you have it. Since the inauguration of President Trump, Trump's voters have commonly used a railroad train as their symbol. Now, if Mr. Kahali has guessed correctly, and the reaction shows that he has, Trump voters might take a new symbol, a submarine. The Navy calls submarines the silent service for a good and obvious reason. Modern submarines are designed to run submerged for days, weeks, months at a time, so you don't even know they're there until they're ready to launch torpedoes or missiles, which can be even more devastating. That's the real metaphor for submerged voters. We'll quietly go about our business and will develop ways to tell when it's safe to speak. Usually that will happen when someone complains about inflation, shortages and whatnot, which happened to me only yesterday. And then, at election time, we'll surprise everyone. Right now, we're at dive attitude and even rigged for silent running. But very soon, we'll get another order. Stand by to surface! Link in the description of the article, to the 5-tweet thread by Mr. Kahali, to my review of Shadow on the Land, to Rich Barris' reaction, then to the reactions of those 4 other voters I mentioned, and to conservative news and views. I've also left links to the awesome CNAV Store and to oursilverlines.com, as I also mentioned. You know already about how to like a video, turn on notifications, and leave a tip. On the end screen, I'm going to leave a subscribe link and links to earlier videos I've done about that speech and a few other relevant things. This is Terry A. Hurlbut delivering another declaration of truth and reminding you to let the truth set you free.